this case example, we have our patient Roy, right? And we will try to describe what this means in terms of this specific patient. Roy is a cisgender British Jamaican man in his 50s. I took this case from a case study from a British psychotherapist, Amal Bartlaska. So Roy is bringing in, is coming to therapy, let's say to an intake, with presenting problem that is low mood, signs of depression, anxiety, and problem sleeping. What is this? This is the leaking roof. This is the problem that the patient is bringing in during the intake. Roy was aware that these problems were linked to his work. On discussion, it became apparent that he was experiencing systemic racism at his workplace, was racially targeted, and was on the receiving end of micro and macroaggressions at work. What is this? These traumatic experiences are the walls of the house. We start to see some of the walls. Now, this is EMDR therapy, but being an EMDR therapist doesn't mean that you are not a therapist no more. So there is a duty we have to improve and ensure safety of our patients that comes first, right? So the therapist first acknowledged the patient, acknowledgement of the institutional racism the patient was suffering, making the patient feeling seen and validated. That's extremely important in any therapy, right? And then the EMDR therapist actually worked with the patient at the possibility of finding a different job. That in this case was a possibility because this is not always the case. And in fact, actually, Roy managed to quit the job and after a while managed to find another, much better job where he felt more appreciated and respected. It's important to point out that it doesn't matter what theory you're using, these important elements of therapy have to be always present. But the EMDR therapist then went on with therapy and realized that he had suffered intense anger for most of his life. Roy actually realized it, reported that, which affected his well-being and relationships. Roy was vaguely aware that it was linked to the experience of racism he struggled against throughout his life. We're just getting bricks in the wall that is keeping Roy stuck. So it resulted that Roy grew up in a small working class town during a period in which in Great Britain there was a very conservative, in mid-70s, very conservative area with a lot of politics that was anti-immigration. So during his childhood and adolescence, he had a lot of overt experiences of racial violence. That then, when he moved to a bigger city, it became more subtle systemic racism, like invalidations, devaluations, microaggressions. But the therapist at this point realizes that the experience of the patient with racism is pervasive, so then stops during the history taking, takes a pause, and thinks, I have to prepare this patient better. I have here to give more skills for this patient because the level of trauma that the patient is reporting is getting more serious session after session. Even without knowing exactly what the preparation phase in EMDR looks like, and Dr. Vertinsky will talk about it later, what I want to point out here is that whatever is done from now on by the therapist is culturally adapted to the patient. So the preparation of the patient, for example, involved using a safe place image that was Montego Bay in Jamaica, a place that was significant, important for the patient. The attachment resource was the spirit of his grandmother. And instead of breathing exercises or body scan, the therapist chose music because this felt a lot more useful as an anchoring, grounding skill for this patient, and music that was meaningful for the patient.